Let me paint a picture for you. The year is 2006. I'm at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I'm a 31 Bravo military police officer, 8 months into my service. And someone puts on V for Vendetta. Now, I need to tell you about my battle buddy. This guy was from outside Chicago, had worked his way into a six-figure corporate job, looked around one day and decided he wasn't actually doing anything of benefit for anyone other than himself. So he walked away from the money and enlisted in the military. When we were out on field training exercises, he'd always sing Sam Cooke, out loud, in the field, full voice, like it was the most natural thing in the world. And we'd have these conversations while on fire watch, deep ones, the kind you only have at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're completely exhausted and the usual filters are gone, about systems, about power, about what we were actually a part of. So, to my point, we're watching this movie, a film about a government that uses fear, surveillance, and manufactured crisis to control its population, watched by two soldiers in uniform on a military base at the height of the global war on terror. And about 40 minutes into the movie, I turned to him and I said, maybe we ought to just blow some shit up and rebuild from nothing. He laughed. That slow, very specific laugh of someone who completely understands what you mean and completely understands why you can't be saying it. And he looks at me and he goes, brother, right mindset. Terrible place to have it. And you know what? I've thought about that exchange a lot since then. Because he wasn't wrong about either part. The mindset, the frustration with systems that grind people down, with power that protects itself, with institutions that consume people and discard them. That frustration is very real and legitimate and worth examining. And the place. Two soldiers in uniform on an active military base during wartime was genuinely the wrong place to be having that particular conversation out loud. But here's the thing. A movie got through the walls anyway. And not in a tear it all down kind of way, not in a way that made me regret my service or ever hate my country. In a, wait a minute, who actually benefits from what I'm being told to believe kind of way? And you know what? I've been asking that question ever since. Because you see, that's what great art does. It finds you wherever you are, even on a military base, even in uniform, even when you are, by definition, the last person who's, quote unquote, supposed to be affected by it. It gets through. Now, the movie that did that to me has one of the most interesting origin stories in cinema, because the symbol at the very center of it, that face, that mask, it belongs to a man who was nothing like what that symbol came to represent. Remember the 5th of November, gunpowder, treason, and plot. That rhyme is 400 years old, and the man behind the mask was not fighting for your freedom. He was fighting for a different kind of tyranny. And that's just the beginning of how weird this all gets. Because then a comic book writer in 1982 took that face and made it an anarchist symbol. And then Hollywood took that comic and made it a liberal American political fantasy. And then Anonymous took that movie and made it the face of anti-corporate protest worldwide. And then Time Warner, one of the largest corporations in the world, started selling that face for $10 a pop to anti-corporate protesters. A face originally belonging to a religious authoritarian, repackaged as an anarchist's symbol, simplified into a liberal fantasy, mass-produced by a corporation and sold to people protesting corporations, and worn at protests on every side of every political argument simultaneously. All of that is documented. All of that is real. So welcome to another edition of Checkpoint Thursday. I'm Nate, and today we're going deep on V for Vendetta. The man, the comic, the film, the mask, and what it means when a symbol escapes the idea that created it. And hey, if you're on YouTube and you're enjoying the show, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a drop. Be sure to hit that bell so brand new episodes land in your feed automatically. New episodes every Monday and Thursday, and sometimes Sunday. Now, let's get into it. Okay, so November 5th, 1605. Guy Fawkes, born in the year 1570 in York, England. Son of a Protestant lawyer who died when Fawkes was only 8. His mother remarried a Catholic. Fawkes converted, and from that point forward, Catholicism became the defining force of his entire life. Now, I want to be really clear about something before we go any further, because every time you see that mask at a protest, on the internet, on someone's face at a rally, the implication is that Guy Fawkes was a rebel, a freedom fighter, someone who stood up against oppressive power. And I need you to understand that Guy Fawkes was not that. He was not fighting for freedom. He was a soldier, a mercenary, a deeply devout man who spent years fighting for Catholic Spain in the Protestant Netherlands. He wasn't standing against authority. He was fighting under the banner of one of the most powerful religious establishments in all of Europe, against Protestant reformers. So in other words, the man whose face became the symbol of rebellion against power spent his actual life enforcing a very different kind of power. I'll just let that sit for a second. Now, in 1604, he got recruited into a conspiracy led by a Catholic gentleman by the name of Robert Catesby. The plan? Blow up the House of Lords during the state opening of Parliament on November 5th, 1605. Kill King James I, kill his ministers, kill the entire Protestant governing class in one very big explosion, and then install a Catholic monarch. So not freedom, just replacement. One authoritarian system for another. And Fawkes wasn't even the mastermind. That was Catesby. Fawkes was just the guy who got caught in the basement with all the gunpowder. Which brings me to the part of this story that I cannot get over. They found him in a cellar beneath Parliament with 36 barrels of gunpowder. 36 barrels! I just want you to think about the logistics of that for a hot second. Someone had to acquire 36 barrels of gunpowder. Someone had to transport 36 barrels of gunpowder. Someone had to store 36 barrels of gunpowder in a cellar beneath Parliament without anyone ever noticing for months. This was not a spontaneous decision. This was a committed man with a very specific plan and apparently very understanding neighbors. Oi, what's in all those barrels, mate? Nothing. Right then. He was tortured in the Tower of London, held out for 5 full days before giving up his co-conspirators, sentenced to be hanged, drawn, and quartered, which is exactly as bad as it sounds, and significantly worse than I'm going to describe. But here's the part that's almost admirable. Moments before his execution, Fawkes jumped from the ladder while climbing to the gallows, broke his neck, and died instantly. Denied his executioners the full sentence. That jump, that one singular act of defiance at the very end, is honestly the only thing about Guy Fawkes that resembles the romantic rebel the world now celebrates. Everything else? A religious militant who failed. And here's the part that absolutely breaks my brain. For the next 400 years, in Britain, Guy Fawkes Night was not a celebration of rebellion. Parliament passed an actual law appointing November 5th as a day of public thanksgiving. Thanksgiving for the failure of the plot. Britain celebrated Guy Fawkes Night for 4 centuries by burning his effigy on bonfires. The man the world now celebrates as a rebel hero was burned in effigy every year in the country where he died. For 400 years. 400 years, guys! Like, your great, 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 great grandmother was probably out there burning this guy's face on a bonfire, thinking she was celebrating the right thing. And now her descendants are buying his face on Amazon and wearing it to protests. You know what? History is genuinely unhinged sometimes, and I mean that as a genuine compliment. Yes, Steve? Steve says he once owned a Guy Fawkes mask back in 2012 and now feels like he needs a minute. Steve, did you know any of this when you bought the mask? Steve did not know any of this when he bought the mask. You know what, buddy? If it makes you feel better, no one did. And that's the whole point of this episode. No, buddy, I really don't think Time Warner does refunds. But I mean, you can try. Now let's fast forward to the year 1982. Britain under Margaret Thatcher, and a man named Alan Moore sat down to write a comic book. Now, before we go any further, I need to describe Alan Moore to you because Alan Moore is a character. Alan Moore is a bearded, wizard-looking man from Northampton, England, who has spent his entire career writing the most brilliant comics ever put to paper and then watching Hollywood turn them into things that make him want to disappear into the center of the earth. V for Vendetta, Watchmen, From Hell, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Every single one, brilliant source material. Hollywood adaptation, Alan Moore somewhere in the background making a face like he bit into a lemon. He has refused all money from film adaptations of his work. He doesn't want it. He even has asked to be removed from the credits. He has given long, detailed interviews explaining exactly how wrong everyone got everything. This man would rather be poor and correct than rich and associated with something he considers a complete betrayal of his work. And you know what? I have tremendous respect for this man. So anyways, back to 1982. The National Front, a fascist political party, is gaining traction in Britain. Thatcher is dismantling the welfare state. The Cold War is at its peak. Nuclear war feels genuinely possible. Moore sits down to write a story about what Britain might look like if it kept going in this direction. And the result? V for Vendetta. A fascist Britain in the near future. A surveillance state, a white supremacist neo-fascist party called Norsefire that has exterminated its opponents and rules through fear and control. And one man, a mysterious anarchist who wears a Guy Fawkes mask, decides to bring it all down. Now, here's where I need you to pay close attention, because Moore was very clear about this. V is not a hero. V is a morally complicated, psychologically damaged, philosophically committed anarchist who does genuinely terrible things in service of his ideology. Moore chose the Guy Fawkes mask deliberately, not because Fawkes was a hero, because Moore knew his history, but because Fawkes represented someone willing to use violence for political ends, which matched exactly what V was willing to do. He took the face of a failed religious militant and redeployed it as the face of principled anarchist resistance. And that is genuinely brilliant creative decision. The comic was dark, morally unresolved, genuinely dangerous in the ideas it was willing to examine. And then Hollywood got a hold of it. 2006, the Wachowskis post 9/11 America. The Bush years. The film, it keeps the mask, keeps the parliament explosion, and keeps the visual spectacle, and changed almost everything else. The fascism became specifically modeled on the Bush administration's America. Surveillance, torture, fear based governance. The anarchy was softened into liberal heroism. V became less morally ambiguous, more romantic, more of a conventional hero with a good soundtrack. And I want to stop here for a hot second because I watched this film in 2006. Inside the Machine, it was critiquing, in uniform, on a military base. And the fear-based governance section, the part about a government that manufactures crises to justify control, hit different from inside a uniform than it probably did for a civilian watching it in a movie theater. Not because I think my service was wrong, because I don't, let me be very clear about that, but because my battle buddy and I sat there and talked about how profitable controlling a population with fear could be, and how no one turns it off once they figure out it works. Just pick a decade, pick a party. The fear is always turned on. The specific threat changes, sure, but the mechanism doesn't. And Moore understood this. And he was completely horrified that the film softened the anarchy into heroism. Because the comfortable version, the version where one charismatic rebel takes down the system with style and a very good soundtrack, is less threatening to power than the actual question underneath it, which is, what do you do when the fear is the product? Moore called the film, and I'm paraphrasing here because I'm only allowed one direct quote per source, a thwarted and frustrated American liberal fantasy using his British anarchist story as a vessel for American political grievances. He said if the Wachowskis wanted to make a political statement about America, they should have set it in America. And you know what? He's not wrong. But here's where it gets really interesting. The film's ending, which Moore hated, by the way, accidentally created something the comic never did. The final image of the film, thousands of people all wearing Guy Fawkes masks, gathering in London as Parliament explodes. A crowd that has taken on the identity of one person, a symbol that belongs to everyone, because it belongs to no one. When V dies at the end of the film, also, spoiler warning, but you know what? It came out 20 years ago, and you've had enough time to watch it. Finch asks Evie who he really was, and she says, he was all of us. That image went out into the world, and then something happened that no one predicted. This episode of the Average Joe Nerdcast is brought to you by Time Warner Rebellion merchandise. Do you want to fight the system? Do you want to stand against corporate power, surveillance states, and the concentration of wealth in the hands of a few? Then great news! Time Warner, a subsidiary of Warner Brothers Discovery, one of the largest media corporations in the world, has the perfect product for you, the Guy Fawkes mask. Originally the face of a Catholic militant who wanted a theocracy, reimagined as an anarchist symbol by a comic book writer, simplified into a liberal fantasy by a Hollywood film, and now available exclusively from Time Warner for just $10. Every purchase sends a fee directly to Time Warner. Your act of anti-corporate rebellion, funded by a corporation, licensed by a corporation, manufactured by a corporation, and sold to you. Time Warner Rebellion merchandise. The system thanks you for your resistance. Side effects may include a vague sense of irony that gets stronger the more you think about it, the realization that your symbol of anti-corporate protest has a corporate trademark, and the dawning awareness that this is somehow also the point. And hey, real quick pause. If you're enjoying the show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're currently listening, then do me a favor. Make sure you're subscribed so brand new episodes land automatically. And then, if you've got a quick minute, be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review. It genuinely helps other people find this show. Now, that's it. Back to it. Okay, so here's what happened after the film came out in 2006. 2008, a decentralized online collective called Anonymous adopts the mask during their protests against the Church of Scientology. Alan Moore himself noticed them, and I love this detail, wearing the masks halfway down Tottenham Court Road, bothering Scientologists. His creation being worn against Scientology by people on the internet who probably hadn't even read the comic. Moore found this fascinating, which tells you a lot about Alan Moore. Then, 2011, Occupy Wall Street. The mask is everywhere. Thousands of people are wearing it to protest economic inequality and corporate power. Then the Arab Spring, Hong Kong pro-democracy protests, Black Lives Matter, various protest movements across the political spectrum on every continent. And then, and this is the detail I need you to hold, January 6th, 2021, the storming of the United States Capitol. People wore the Guy Fawkes mask on January 6th. The same mask worn at Occupy, a progressive economic justice movement. The same mask worn at Hong Kong democracy protests. The same mask worn at anti-fascist demonstrations worldwide. Worn at an event that many people described as an attempted authoritarian coup. The same symbol, opposite sides, simultaneously. And here's the Time Warner detail that ties the whole absurd bow on all of this. Time Warner owns the rights to the image and gets paid a fee with every official mask sold. By 2011, the protesters' adoption of the mask made it the top-selling mask on Amazon. Hundreds of thousands sold per year, and every one of them sending more money to Time Warner. Every anti-corporate protester wearing a mask that generates corporate revenue. Every single one. Moore described it as comical. And I quote, "A bit embarrassing to be a corporation that seems to be profiting from an anti-corporate protest." Unquote. Comical. The man who created the symbol finds it comical. And here's what Moore said about what the mask had actually become, and this is the part that I think is genuinely beautiful, even inside all the irony. He said the mask was operatic, that it created a sense of romance and drama, that the people wearing it looked like they were having a good time, and that sends out a tremendous message. He wasn't horrified by what happened to his creation. He was fascinated. Because Moore understood something about symbols that everyone else in this story missed completely. A symbol that escapes its origin is still doing something. Maybe something more interesting than what it was designed to initially do. Yes, Steve? Steve says he's thinking about what it means that the same mask got worn at Occupy and January 6th. Steve also says, does that mean the mask failed or does that mean it worked? Steve, honestly, I think that's the most interesting question in this entire episode. Because here's one answer. The mask failed. When a symbol can mean anything, then it means nothing. When everyone claims the same symbol for opposite purposes, the symbol is just aesthetic. Just a thing people put on their faces with no ideological weight behind it. But here's another answer. The mask worked. Because what Occupy and January 6th had in common, underneath all their differences, was the feeling of being unheard, of being invisible, of existing in a system that wasn't built for people like them. The mask didn't unite their politics. It united their feeling. And maybe that's what symbols are actually for. Today's episode of the Average Joe Nerdcast is also brought to you by the idea. The idea is bulletproof. You can imprison the idea. You can torture the idea. You can hang the idea, draw it, and quarter it. You can burn its effigy for 400 years. The idea does not care. The idea will wait. The idea will find a comic book writer in 1982 and escape through his pen. The idea will find filmmakers in 2005 and escape through the screen. The idea will find thousands of people in masks and escape through their presence. The idea does not belong to the person who first had it. The idea does not belong to the corporation that licensed it. The idea does not belong to the protesters who wore it. The idea belongs to whoever needs it. That's what makes it dangerous. The idea, bulletproof since 1605. So let me bring this whole thing home. We started with a man who died for an idea, a religious theocracy that never came to be. His face burned in effigy for 4 centuries as a symbol of failed treason. 400 years later, a British comic writer in Thatcher's England found that face and gave it to a morally complicated anarchist who was willing to blow up Parliament in the name of an entirely different idea. That people must be free to choose their own path, even chaotically, even dangerously. Then Hollywood simplified that anarchist into a hero, stripped out the anarchy, sold the idea to a mass audience as a story about standing up to fascism with American liberal values. Then the internet took the face, divorced from all of that context, from the Catholic militant and the anarchist comic and the Hollywood liberal fantasy, and made it the face of protest itself. Any protest. All protest. The face of anyone who feels like the system was not built for them and has decided to say something about it. And then a corporation started selling it for $10 a pop. Here's the thing I want to leave you with. V for Vendetta, the film, has one line that explains all of this better than anything else. Ideas are bulletproof. Not people, not symbols, not even masks, but ideas. Guy Fawkes, the man who was caught, tortured, and executed, he failed completely. But the idea that a person, any person, could stand in front of the machinery of state power and say no, that idea didn't die with him. It just waited 4 centuries, found a pen, found a screen, found a mass production facility in China, and a $10 price tag on Amazon, and escaped into the world. The idea outlived the man. The idea outlived the comic. The idea outlived the film. The idea outlived every specific political position anyone ever attached to the mask. And that, honestly, well, it's kind of extraordinary, even if Time Warner gets a cut. And that, my friends, is going to do it for this edition of Checkpoint Thursday. And before I get out of here, if you're watching or listening on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or honestly, wherever you're listening, do me a favor. Make sure you're subscribed and leave a 5-star rating and review if your platform allows it. Word of mouth and reviews are exactly how independent podcasts grow, and every single one of them matters. Also, episode 100 is coming in just about 3 months, so I want to hear from you. How did you find the show? What episode has been your favorite? And what do you want to hear in the future? Send everything over to averagejoenerdcast@gmail.com or drop it over in the lobby. And speaking of the lobby, that's our private Facebook group. You should come and find us over there. I'll drop the link to the group in the show notes, or you can head straight over to Facebook and in the search bar, just type Average Joe Nerdcast the lobby, and you will find the page. Tell me, did you own one of these masks? Did you know any of this history? Drop it over in the thread. Quick shout out to my player 2. Thank you for watching V for Vendetta with me for research and for not pointing out that I already knew all the words to the Valerie monologue. You're the reason any of this happens. I've been Nate. Stay gold, nerd bold. And remember, the idea is bulletproof. I'll catch you on the next one.
Game over.